Welcome on behalf of the members of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus from Trenton to you. I'm your host, New Jersey State Senator Ronald L. Rice, and Chairman of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus. It's good to be back in your homes today with this program. The members of the Legislative Black Caucus are very busy, even though we're not in Trenton on a regular basis right now. I'm certain we'll be going back soon. But we want to continue to have discussion and bring in guests to educate you, the public, and provide information to you that can be of benefit to not only you personally, but to your family, your friends, your communities, the folk you go to church with, people you interact with in general, and just simply people you meet. Many people that I talk to, particularly in my generation, we're so disgusted and so fed up, and even in government really don't have all the answers as to this violent crime that continue to plague our country, and particularly the black and urban communities, black and brown and urban communities. We don't know what's going on with the generations behind us. We have to be very honest about it. These are our children. These are our grandchildren. These are our people of color. And we need to find a way to fix it. Those of us in the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, we do understand one thing that's very real, and we're trying to educate our colleagues to the facts. Number one, if you don't have quality housing, you don't have a good quality job, you don't have good quality education, you don't have good quality health care, yes, you're going to raise folk who fall into the criminal justice system from infant on up. Because when your life is all about abandoned buildings and vacant lots and people hanging on street corners selling drugs, and we're sending messages that it's okay to do drugs, we want to legalize drugs, there's a real problem there. People are making money off black and brown people. I know many of you who watch the program may not like to hear me say that, but it's real, and we have to face these realities if we want to address the problems of the violent crime. We know that the criminal justice system, which members of the Legislative Black Caucus, working with the Latino Caucus, we're trying to reform the criminal justice system where at least there's some fairness in the process itself. We're not saying to people that our folks should not be arrested along with white folk who commit the same type of crime. What we are saying, we cannot have a system of criminal justice where black folks are being arrested for the same type of crimes in numbers 3 and 4 greater than whites. That tells you right there there's something wrong with the system. And we think that everybody, whether you're black, white, brown, it does not make a difference, should have equity and equality as it relates to all the kinds of things that we do. With that being said, we've been held up in this country, we've been held up in the state of New Jersey, as I mentioned to you many times, by nonprofit organizations. And we just thank the good Lord, those of us who are spiritual people, for these nonprofits. They don't have a lot of money, but they have a lot of people of goodwill who find the time and give up the time to try to help us work through the many problems that's plaguing our communities. And whether it's housing, whether it's criminal justice, whether it's education, whether it's health care, there are people who are giving up time trying to help other families. And by the way, we have to get back into family values. You know, I don't buy this notion that because a mother is raising kids and there's no man in the house, that we can't raise the kid properly. Yes, the mother needs some help. Yes, we have to be extended family. But my mother raised 4 boys until the courts separated us, and she was single head of household. And so we know it can be done. Times are different, yes. The violence is different. We understand that. I also think that local government needs to do more besides talk. I think there's a way of addressing abandoned buildings and vacant lots besides just the rhetoric we get and the trade-off we get with contractors who write checks for campaign contributions, and in between that, nothing else happened, etc., in these urban cities throughout the state. And so today we have with us a very lovely young lady who devoted her time to really working with the young people and others in the community to try to do her part with her organization to create a better quality of life for everybody. And that is Miss Elaine Lane, who is the founder of an organization known as David's Shoes. And Elaine's going to tell us about herself when we get started, but she's going to also tell us about David's Shoes, and we're going to have some questions and answers and have some fun as we always do. What I want you, the viewer, to do is to take this information and share it with your family and your friends. And those of you who have time, Elaine will tell you how you can volunteer that time. 1 hour makes a difference in people's lives. 15 minutes can make a difference. Contributions can make a difference. But she'll give you that information as we discuss David's shoes on this program today. So Elaine, it's good to have you. I want to thank you on behalf of the members of the New Jersey Legislative Bloc Caucus for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come to be with us today to share what you're doing with our viewers. But also we want to thank you for what you're doing. We know we cannot pay you. We know that you don't get paid to do this work, etc. But we also know that there's a real commitment there. And it's people like you that make life better for those of us who are elected officials, because you give us the hope and faith and the courage to continue to fight the good fight on legislation that many times our colleagues don't want to pass. And some of them are biased, we understand that. Some don't understand, we understand that. But because you're in the vineyard and you're working hard, it gives members of the Legislative Bloc Caucus the strength collectively and individually to work just as hard in Trenton on your behalf and behalf of the people that you represent and you work with. So Elaine, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to talk about David's shoes.
A little bit about myself. All right, I'm a retiree from the Board of Education here in Newark. I've worked for 30 years in education. For 25 years I was an elementary school teacher, teaching mostly 8th graders, thank God, and then became a staff developer in language arts for the last 5 years. I then retired thinking that that was it, went to Patterson and helped to create a school predominantly for young people who wanted to go into teaching. Stayed there for 4 years. And for the last couple of years now, I've been just an adjunct faculty member at Montclair State University. I'm from South Carolina, came up here right after college looking for a job, and ended up in teaching.
So let me ask you a question, Elaine. So you come from South Carolina, you've been teaching. Doing your life, well, first of all, what part of South Carolina are you from?
Charleston.
Okay, you're from Charleston, and you've been teaching. So the work you do now is really, teaching was really kind of a prelude to it without your knowing. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit.
First, it's really kind of funny. You said I can joke. I never wanted to become a teacher. That was not the thing I wanted to do. As a matter of fact, when I went to college, I made sure, at least I thought, I did not take any courses that would allow me to teach. And then when I came up here and looking for a job, I found that I did have 2 courses. I did take 2 courses that allowed me to teach. So I said, okay, I'll go and get my certificate, go get licensed, but I'm only going to teach for 3 years, and then I'm going to find out what I want to do. Well, within those 3 years, I found out that this is exactly what I wanted to do. That I really enjoyed working with young people, and it was exciting to me, and I knew I wanted to work with young people, and I knew I wanted to work with adults, but I didn't know what that was. And within those 3 years, I found out that that's exactly what it was. And now what I'm doing, I think I've been teaching all my life, because right now, even though I'm not teaching math or English or any of that, I think I'm teaching something else as well. So it's been a continuum.
You know, it's interesting primarily because I've told this story over and over, and our viewers have heard it many times, is that oftentimes our mission and direction comes from a higher power. For those who believe or do not believe, I never wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be a police officer, one of the best jobs I ever had. I said I'll never teach. I did adjunct professorship at Essex County Community College. I thought it was a wonderful job. I never looked to go to work for PSE&G, Public Service Electric and Gas Company. They asked me to come, and I turned it down many times when I was a cop, and eventually I wound up working there. I didn't want anything to do with politics and wound up being a draft candidate. So when people ask me now, if you're no longer elected official, what are you going to do next? I said, whatever the good Lord will, because it seems to me that all the academics, you know, I went to school like you did. I have the associate, the bachelor's, the master, I went to law school and all that stuff. I don't remember using any of it, etc. And to be quite frank about it, I forgot what I wanted to be when I was a little kid because I never got there.
Right,
Okay,
right.
but that's because we're public servants. We're not going to get rich in the things we do,
Amen.
but we can maintain commitment and integrity,
Absolutely.
and be committed to teaching young people and sharing what we do
Yes.
have, and that's what you do at Davis Shoes. So why don't we just talk about Davis Shoes? What inspired you? First of all, tell us what is Davis Shoes, and then tell our viewers what inspired you to actually start this organization.
Okay, Davis Shoes is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to reduce teen violence by encouraging children and teens to honor their lives, believing that before you can honor somebody else's life, you first have to honor yourself. Before you can love somebody else, you have to love yourself. So that's our major goal, to get kids to really value who they are. Because I honestly believe if they value who they are, then they'll make decisions that would allow them to see their dreams, that their lives might not be cut so short. So that's my goal, just to let them see exactly how important they are, and to realize that if I am this important, then I've got to take the time to think about the decisions I make. I just can't fly off the handle and say, this is what I'm going to do, or follow the crowd. And if I am that important, then I need to take some time to think for myself, Well,
I know that Davis Shoes have a lot of programs. Let's talk about those programs individually as we move along in this show. But tell us about what activities does Davis Shoes really do to advance the goals of and the mission of the organization?
One of the most important things I do is, first let me back up a little bit. Davis Shoes came into being because my son was killed as a result of teen violence. After years and years of grief, and finally coming out of it, because at one time I thought I was the only one, the only person having experienced this. After coming out of that cloud of grief, I found out that I wasn't the only one. It was happening every day. Every day it was happening on and on and on. And I realized that something had to be done. Something had to be done. And I tried to join other organizations, and I did join Maine Moms March. But that wasn't enough for me. I knew there was something else that I had to do. That didn't feed me. One day I went to an exhibit in Military Park, and it showed all of the shoes of
Veterans?
of what do you call it? Military men.
Veterans, yeah.
Right, who had fought in the Iraq War. And it showed very regular shoes of men, women, children.
Right.
And it created a path. And it asked you to walk that path. And when I tried to walk that path, I couldn't do it. The energy would not allow me to do it, So on my way home, I said, you know what? If shoes did that to me, maybe, just maybe, shoes of young people who have been killed by gun violence, it will do that same thing to them. And if it could affect or impact one youth, where he would change his mind about his life or her life, then it's all worthwhile. And so one of the things I do is the presentations. I go to schools, youth organizations, anywhere that there are youth, and where I'm invited or where I can get invited, where I can ask to come to speak to students, churches. And I have a presentation. Part of the presentation is to tell my story, tell exactly what happened. And the other part is to have a conversation with the kids, because I do enjoy talking with students rather than just, because I know that they're used to having people lecture them. And I prefer having a conversation with them. And I began to talk about SMART goals and explain exactly what SMART goals mean, and tell them that yes, education is extremely important, but education is not all. You need more, and that more is to think about the values that you want to live this life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you journey your whatever you decided you want to do, whatever your dream is, you know, you have that dream, that's your goal, that's where you're
Mm-hmm.
going. And so you're going to create smart goals based on that dream.
Okay.
Now, in order to get to that dream, you are going to have obstacles. There are going to be obstacles in front of
So
you.
let's that's a good segue. Let's talk about this. A couple of points you made.
Hmm.
Number one, for our viewers, you indicated that this whole story started with veterans and military shoes, people who've actually been harmed and died in war, and the tragedies that surrounded the war. Certainly, those of us who live in states like New Jersey, urban cities, urban city communities, and border communities are living in war zones. It's just not
Yes.
the same type of war zone. It's a gang violence and people who just given up on life. Young people who have created their own subcultures and their own sub-morals, if you will, and value systems, etc. Young parents who never had a chance to even grow up, so they still act like kids trying to raise kids, and they're sharing kid values with their children. We get that. Then you talk about your story, and you also talk about that there's just more to education, to just learning. And the one thing I want to say to you and to our viewers, and this is what I keep harping on educators to do, for a long time we always talk about in education the 3 R's. We always talk about reading, writing, and we say arithmetic, which is short for arithmetic. The 3 R's. And I always tell the young people when I talk to them in schooling lane, I tell them, I say, you know, it's nice for folk to tell you how important the 3 R's are, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but I'm gonna say this to you, and I hate to bust your bubble, but when you finish school, it doesn't mean a thing if you don't have the other 2 R's. You have to have respect and responsibility. And so I try to encourage our teachers to teach our young people at an early age that there are 5 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And it's respect and responsibility. So when the parents say get up in the morning and make your bed, make the bed. Teach the kids to take out the garbage. Teach them how to get to school on time, to be responsible. Teach them how to even say yes sir, no ma'am if you have to, or just say it in a pleasant way. Teach them respect and responsibility. And then the education is going to carry them a long ways. I've known people who got good education degrees can never hold a job because they did not have the values that we used to bring up in South Carolina and Virginia and in North Carolina, too. We're going to add that in there because Pearl's here, etc. And we're going to even go out west to Texas and add that in there. But seriously, that's important. So you mentioned that. The other thing you mentioned was walking and the shoes. We always had this conversation in our generation, the adult, that you can never walk in my shoes, or those are big shoes to fill, or you need to learn to walk in my shoes. Well, shoes become very important because you can walk in my shoes and my shoes can take you down the wrong pathway.
Absolutely.
Or you can walk in my shoes and my shoes can take you down the right pathway.
Right.
And so you have to determine which shoes actually fit you and fit you well. And we would like to suggest to you that the pathway to doing the right things and the pathways to being drug-free and the pathways to getting a good quality education, those shoes fit you perfectly. Those other shoes, they're a little loose and some of them are just too big and they'll take you the wrong way. And so I wanted to mention that. Now I want to back up, Elaine, before we get into more about David's shoes, because you said you speak to the public on a regular basis wherever you can, and you tell your story. So since you do that anyway, it's already public information. If you don't mind, we would like to ask you to share some of that story with our viewers.
On Saturday, March 14th, 1998, I got up and my son called me. He was living in Virginia at that time. And he said, Ma, I want to come home. His birthday was going to be the next week.
Okay.
And so he wanted to come home to, celebrate his birthday. And in the conversation, because I know he was struggling with being a teen and struggling with life and everything else, but I heard what I thought he had turned a corner and began to realize what this thing called life is, have an idea
Right.
was all about. And I said, okay, and so I said, oh, I would see him tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That was a Saturday. I would see him Sunday. And I was that Saturday. I was going to buy both of us a new mattress.
Okay.
So I went up to Macy's to get the mattress, and my girlfriend stayed. She said, Elaine, do you think David will ever come back to live with you? And I told her, I don't care whether he comes back and never lives with me. He'll always have a place in my house. So we're
Right.
going to go and buy these two mattresses. And later on that night, as I was on the couch, I received a telephone call, and it was Mrs. Parker, Joe's best friend's grandmother.
Okay.
And Mrs. Parker called to say, and she said, Mrs. Lynn, I'm calling because Joe asked me to call you and to tell you that David has been killed. And the only thing I could do was just listen. I
Right.
couldn't scream, I couldn't yell, I couldn't do anything except listen. And when she finished talking, I said, thank you, and hung up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then for some stupid reason, I got up from my couch and went to started to go to a corner in my living room.
Right.
And on my way to that corner, something said, if you get there, you'll never get back out.
Mm-hmm.
So that scared me because I saw myself
Right.
being a bag of bones in that corner, nobody knowing
Right,
anything else,
right.
and here I am. And I said, but I don't know what happened. I said, I could be dead in that corner, but I don't know what happened. So
Right.
I ran back to the telephone,
Mm-hmm.
called her again, asked her as many questions as I possibly could, and then realized that she was giving me the only answers that she had.
Right.
So again, I had to thank her and hang up. But that wasn't good enough for me. So I called the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and they told me that they had no record of anybody because their computers were down. They couldn't
Okay.
tell me who was discharged or who was admitted. I called the coroner's office. This is 12
Okay.
o'clock at night,
Okay,
so you know
right.
that they're closed.
Right. Right.
And so I get the recorded message about when to call, et cetera, et cetera. I'm trying to figure out who to call, and it dawned on me, okay, I can call the police department. I called the police department, and they said, yes, a young man had been killed that day, but they could not tell me who it was because they didn't know who I am.
Right.
They said, you wait until tomorrow morning when the detectives are when the detective who has that case comes, and you can speak to him. So I had a whole night to come to grips with the fact that my son had been killed.
Right.
And it just, I think sometimes I think it's really funny because the next day my girlfriend called, and because she had found out, I don't know how she found out, and I said, yeah, I said, but I want to get through this grieving thing, get through it so I can continue my life. And I thought that, like, in the South,
Right.
you had, what is it, 3 months you wear black.
Yeah. Yes. That's right.
So I wanted to get these 3 months through. I wasn't going to wear black, but I was going to have these 3 months and
right.
I'd be gone. And it was much more than 3 months. Much more than 3 months. And I say this because I think it's extremely important. There are times in which we need help. Sometimes we need mental health help. And that's exactly what I needed in order to get through the grief. When I finally began to get through the grief, then I was able to see what was going on and knowing that I had to do something about it.
And as a result of that, we have David Shoes today. We have a
Right.
very lovely young lady who tells her story, one who works with all of us in the community to try to make life a little better for someone else, but to also try to help parents who go through this to get through this, okay? We can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow. We always say spiritually there's a time and place for all of us. We don't know why and how. We don't question that, but there are reasons for everything. And so David Shoes is here, and maybe the reason was that we have David Shoes, that we were just sharing her son for a period of time in order to get her on the right path to help others in life. And this is the story that's told every day in our communities, and it's very sad in one sense, but it's something that we have to come to grip with. We also have to, on the violent and senseless and stupid crimes, find a way to get our young people minds set in a new direction. And so mental health is something that we work on in the legislature. We believe in it. Mental health is not what a lot of people think it is, because when you say mental health, people think that you're crazy, like the old days, you should be in some asylum someplace, or as we used to say as kids, you go blue, 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 blue with your finger in your lip, something wrong with it. No. The mere fact that young people, your children, your grandchildren get up in the morning and walk down the streets and see people hanging out, that's frustrating and stressful. The mere fact they don't have playgrounds to go to after school, or even gym sometime while they're in school, or musical instruments to play, that's stressful. Knowing that other kids have it, they don't have it. And so those are reasons to get counseling too, to deal with the mental condition. It doesn't mean that you're mentally crazy. It means that you need some strength, you need some support systems. And so that's an important lesson to learn from this program today with Elaine Lane here to have the discussion. Elaine, what does David, well, we talk about some of the things that you do to advance, but let's talk about some of the programs, of course, and we can talk the advancement within the programs. But before I get there, you mentioned the word SMART before, but you also used the word, and when you talk to people, I understand, you talk about honor life.
Yes.
What do you mean by honor life?
What do I mean by honor life? I mean for us to look and see ourselves as important. And I know a kid might say, "Why do you think I'm important?" And I've told the kids, I said, "Well, the first thing is you're breathing."
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's
That's
right.
it. You don't have to do anything big. The fact that you're breathing, you have the opportunity to do whatever it is that you want to do. You have a job. You have a gift to give to our society, and you cannot give it if you don't honor who you are. And if you don't honor who you are, you cannot honor anybody else. And
Right.
I honestly do believe that. Sometimes I get very upset about Martin Luther King programs because, like we have all of these beautiful programs and the kids are doing this, and then they go outside and then that might hit somebody or do something totally opposite of what Martin Luther King would have wanted. I would prefer to see this kid take the values of Martin Luther King and live those values, because that's what it means by honoring, And so I honestly believe that we need to realize that each and every one of us are important. Each and every one of us are have value, and that we need to live that value. Not just talk it, but to live about how valuable we are,
It's interesting you would mention Dr. King and how sometimes the story really of Black progress, if you will, and how we got to where we are, that young people see it and they don't live it. They just, and I think one of the reasons for that, I've said this oftentimes in my speeches, talking to people and talking to the Legislative Black Caucus and other Black elected officials, we have a very awesome job, because we have to really represent everybody. We have to do that. That's the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, and that's what the voters elect us to do. But we also have this awesome responsibilities as Black and brown people to do more for Black and brown people. We have to be the role models. We have to be the ones that can take the hits and show young people we can take the hits and make the sacrifices that Black folk made for us to get to where we are today. There's no way you to come out of Charleston, South Carolina to be a teacher today had it not been for the Dr. Kings and the people before Dr. King. I recognize that. And so that's another lesson for our viewers today. You need to tell Black elected officials in particular that represent you, and I don't care if you're white, Black, Latino, or Asian, that Black elected officials have a greater responsibility to be up front in this war against crime and violent crime, and to talk to young people and to redirect young people, and not be ashamed to stand up and push legislation, whether it passes or not, but stand up and overtly speak on legislation needed to assist us. And that's where we fall down oftentimes. The Legislative Black Caucus, we try to be strong in those roles as we can, and I try to strengthen our membership as their chairman as we move through. And so I think when you talk honor life, it's very important that we reinforce that whole notion. Now, in your business, you work with a lot of young people. You interact with a lot of young people, and you speak to a lot of young
Yes,
people.
yes.
The question I want to raise for our viewers is, how are these young people responding to you and your message?
David Shoes was founded in 2007, so this is really our 12th year.
Okay.
And I've been to schools in a lot of the larger cities here: Newark, Patterson, East Orange, Irvington. And within those years, I've only had 2 times being in front of a group of students where I saw a lack of respect, only twice. And so I think that's awesome, absolutely awesome, because I know I've made quite a few, more than 50 presentations, and out of that, last week I did a presentation to a group of students, and I asked them at the end of it just to tell me what impacted you, based on what part of the presentation impacted you. The one that really touched my heart was a young lady. She said, she told me about the part that impacted her, and she said, as a result of your story, I am able to allow myself to heal. So I think that we do touch the students, and I do think that we make a difference somehow. We have a pledge, David Shoes Honor Life Pledge, and at the end of every presentation that I have the kids stand up and we all say it. And in my teaching mode, I say, your homework is every morning you say it. Then for the next 30 days, every morning you say it. You learn it, and then you live it. And it's just asking students, the pledge is just asking students to honor who they are. And I tell them, I said, when you talk about when you make a promise, your word is bond. You're making a promise to yourself.
Right.
And that's really, really important,
So let's talk about the pledge.
Right.
I just happen to have a copy of the pledge.
Okay.
For our viewers, I'm going to read the pledge to you. I promise to honor my life by loving myself. I do nothing that hurts or harms me. I make choices that support me because I love myself. I love others. I respect the gift of life given to me. My dreams are big. My dreams are so important that I dedicate my life to my dreams. I honor my life. I honor me. That is your pledge.
That's a pledge. Right?
That's a great pledge.
Thank you.
So you work with the young people and you interact with them. Is that the only group you interact with? Because listening to your story, it means that there are a lot of parents and adults that need healing as well. And many of these adults lost their only child.
Yes, yes.
Many of them have other children and that they're afraid they may lose because they lost someone already. And some have actually lost multiple children.
Yes, yes.
So is there an interaction with David Shoes in the adult community as well? And if so, talk about that a little bit.
I have presented to adults. There's one time in Patterson where, there was a whole audience full of adults, and I can't remember exactly what group brought them there, why, how I was invited. But my goal to them is to say, if we want to honor life, we want our students to honor life, we want our children to honor life, then we have to do that. We have to be the role model.
Right.
And the other one was, I can remember, and a lot of times I do talk, but sometimes it's a lot of it is an anti-violence kind of a thing. And you're right. There have been times in which I've talked to adults who had lost children, and the only thing I could do is to share my story, and to let them know that wherever they are in that grieving process, that's exactly where they need to be, and to allow themselves to grieve and allow themselves to feel and to be, and because I think that's the quickest way to get out of it. And then they can see exactly what they can do. We've had one organization, uh, this one woman knew about me,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone in her family or her close friend had lost a child, had lost her daughter
Okay.
due to domestic violence. And she thought about me because she saw this woman grieving and everything else. She said, "You got to do what Miss Lane does." And so now, thank God, there's a scholarship program for young women.
Okay.
I have a scholarship program, a book scholarship program, but these are for young men.
Okay.
So with this other woman, with this other one, there's a scholarship program for young women as well.
So you just said something. Let me ask this question. You mentioned young women.
Mm-hmm.
Do you work with young women and men, or young boys? I think that's important for us to identify right now.
I work with everybody.
Okay.
It's, as long as you because um, in this journey, I found out that a lot of young girls are being killed,
Mm-hmm.
and I share that with the young ladies, and I tell them, especially with the high school kids, and I said, "Guess who is killing?
Mm-hmm.
And how are they being killed?" And I relate to them. It's because I have several pairs of shoes in which their significant other, their boyfriends,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
killed them.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know what? You need to honor yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to make sure that that person who you care for honors you.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't honor you, you can love them and love them from afar.
Right,
Not,
right.
So all kids. The only thing is the scholarship program is basically for young men, but I speak to all kids.
So from the beginning of David's Shoes to the present, because you've been around about 12 years,
Mm-hmm.
has any of your mission changed at all? Or are you still focused the same way? Have you grown in mission? Have you expanded mission of the program?
I think that we have gotten more intense in our mission.
Mm-hmm.
We have the scholarship program. We have connected with a theater, a small theater
Okay.
in New York. And their purpose is to be a voice, they say, to the voiceless, to groups like people who have experienced gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I also worked with them, and we had a exhibit as their play. The assignment was given at the Luna Theater in what is it? In
South
Orange,
Mm-hmm.
right. It was also given in New York as well.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, part of the story is a part of my story as well.
Okay.
We also have exhibited, there is a program called Gun Country, where people talk about how guns have impacted them.
Mm-hmm.
And Gun Country was shown in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Okay.
And David Shoes had the exhibit, the shoe exhibit, because
Right.
it's not just the shoes. Each pair of shoes represent a kid.
Exactly.
And there's a tag on that shoe that explains who this kid is, how old they were when they died, and exactly what happened. So
I think that's great. It's like what used to happen with the automobile drunk driving, Moms Against Drunk Driving,
Right.
how they would take the vehicle and place it on some island on the highway where you drive past. Oh man, look at that vehicle. That's awful. Okay, I don't want to drink,
Right,
and
right,
drive.
right.
I think that the shoes is really this is really unique. What you're doing, it really is, particularly when it comes to violence in our community. As a veterans thing, I think is good too. But just to do it from a young people perspective, as to shoes, because there's so much we can do when we talk about shoes.
Mm-hmm.
We can tell young people how to walk in shoes. We can
Mm-hmm.
tell them how the shoes should fit. It's just so many stories and ways we can direct, particularly in the classroom
Right,
setting and environment. So, where do you really make your presentations? Are they all in the schools, the churches, or where? Where do you make your presentations?
Where?
Yeah.
Schools,
Okay.
churches, where there might be some kind of what do you call it, youth organizations.
Okay. Okay.
Wherever they're, number one, that's where I target. Then there are people who call me.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you call it? And June is gun violence awareness.
Right.
And so there are times in which I do presentations. Someone
Okay.
would ask me to do a presentation during that particular time.
Okay.
In December is when the young people, where is that? In Connecticut, were killed at school.
Yes.
And here again, that I'm also, a lot of times I'm called to make presentations concerning concerning that, not only making those students, making everybody aware of those students, but making everybody aware of all students who were killed as a result of gun violence.
So it seemed like David Shoes is a lot of work. And I guess the next question is a couple of questions. Number one, do you have staff? Where does your funding come from? And while we're in this mode, before we run out of time, when you talk about your staff and funding, let people know how they can get in touch with you, how they can volunteer, how they can send checks and funding if they have it to send. A dollar makes a difference. You know, we see TV and we watch the TV and we see this sad looking faces of people being abused in foreign country, and regardless of how bad we're doing, many of us will write a check. They'll tell you $1.16 a month will take care of this, $1 a day. So a dollar makes a difference. $100 make a bigger difference. $1,000 make a bigger difference. We'll also see the programs where we have the sad looking animals who've been abused, and we give. And whites give more than blacks. They make the sacrifice whether they're on welfare or not. So we need to make some sacrifices too. And so Elaine's going to tell you how you can volunteer your time, because time is money to them, or how you can make a contribution if you don't have time, and how you can tell your friends and people to make time. And for people in general, and particularly the black community, you know, when we go to church, the pastor's always talking about love offering and tithes and scholarship programs. But tell them they can do a little set aside maybe once a month for David Shoes as well. So just take the information from Elaine now before I ask any more questions. This is my commercial. We don't do commercials on this program, right? So the thing is that take this information, get your paper and your pens and your pencils, and she's going to share information with you. And then she's going to tell us about the staffing and the funding. Okay, so maybe you tell them about the staff and the funding first, and maybe their hearts will open up to you when you give them the information about where to send the funding. Okay.
Right. First, just let me say, Saturday we had our scholarship luncheon, and our goal is to give 10 scholarships, book scholarships of $500 to 10 young men, and we give that for the 4 years they're in school. So in essence, they get $2,000, and we're beginning to raise that amount because we realize how much money books are. So just Saturday, $6,000 we're giving. But okay, you talk about staffing.
Right.
There is no staff.
Okay.
We have volunteers. We have a board of directors, and even though board of directors are supposed to be to make sure that everything we do is legal and upstanding and everything else, when you have a small nonprofit, your board of directors become your volunteers as well. Right. So all of us work extremely hard to make sure that we do the best we can. The good part about it is there are times in which, take for instance, one of my parents said last year at our lunch, she said, Elaine, I want to help. And thank God, so we were able to pull her in and have her help. You can help. Go to www.davidshoes.org.
Okay, go slowly. Say it one more time.
Right. www.davidsshoes, because there's a 2 S's in the middle. Right. DAVIDSSHOES.org. And then when you go to the contact page and explain what you want to do, et cetera, and I will get back in touch with you. I certainly will get in touch with you.
Is there a phone number that they can use?
I can give you the phone number right now.
Okay.
The number is 973-704-7201. 973-704-7201.
So as we talk about funding, we're going to move to some more questions about David Shoes. Do you get any corporate support at all? Have you tried to get corporate support?
We are in the process of trying to do that.
Okay.
we have been sponsored by several banks. The
Mm-hmm.
last one, Investors Bank, have sponsored us, at least our luncheon for
Mm-hmm.
the past couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
or have given us a sponsorship. And PNC has also done it a couple of years. But that's all we've gotten so far. We have to get into we are moving into the direction of seeking support from corporations. We are in, so if anybody know anything about grant writing, please get in touch with me as quickly as possible.
So if you're a volunteer grant writer or you're a grant writer, volunteer your time and get in touch with Elaine so you can write grants. And after the program, I'm going to ask her to get in touch with a couple of corporations that I believe um, who does a lot in our communities, but really need to keep the focus on the violence in our communities because some of them benefit from the violence. Not that they want to, they just happen to do that. For example, when you talk to big insurance companies and
Right.
people like that, health entities, then unfortunately they benefit directly, indirectly from it. And I think that's very important. Also, we do know that in our area we have folk who are interested in education. And I think that the group you're talking to, if you're talking to young people, then we should connect them with education. We should
Yes.
connect them with reading
Right.
more about the kinds of things they want to do. And many of our young people won't take the time to do a book. But a lot of them have earphones in their ears
You're right.
and they'll listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you can listen to music, you can listen to a book too now.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to have that
Absolutely.
conversation. So, Elaine, let's move on. So we talked about the volunteers, we talked about the funding, and we talked about how we got into the program, the importance of it. Let's talk about some of the programs now, and then we're going to back into some questions. But I want to talk about some of the programs because I think it's important for our viewers to know some of the things you do. So I happen to have with me a whole lot of pretty stuff here about David's shoes. And I know you're helping children and you always talk, as I said, about the Honor Life piece, right?
Right.
But also, you give your presentations and you
Right.
spoke about that.
Right.
But you have a mentoring program.
We do.
Talk about the
We
mentoring
do.
program.
This is kind of unique because you don't usually have mentoring programs for younger students and for high school or maybe elementary school students. Our mentoring program right now is for our college students who are in college, our young men who are in college.
Okay.
And they get the opportunity to meet with other, college graduates who have, who now are working. We have one of our mentors is one of our former students
Okay.
who went to school, went to Drew, graduated from Drew, is now working, and now he is donating his time. He's also a part of our board of directors,
Okay.
but he's helping to mentor students who are now in college. So we talk about they get the opportunity to share their journey with their mentors as well as with each other. We try to have at least one workshop through the a year, and we have at least twice in which they'll have dinner and have the conversations. And then throughout the year, they're talking to each other via social media, talking or whatever.
Okay.
But I think that's extremely important. I remember once when one of our students became an intern and was able to go, I think, to California or someplace. And this other kid said, "Well, how do you do that?"
You have like.
And so he found out how do you do that. And he had been interning in Texas at Google for his 3 or 4 years in school.
Okay.
And so we want to build that up. We still have some issues. We still have some, things we need to work out. But it's there. And I
Well,
think
that's a good program, and maybe there should be conversation. I can have some with you about interns for your organization.
yes.
Because the institutions are trying to place particularly young people and college students who are studying sociology and other such type of courses. They want to place them in nonprofit organizations that's interacting with the community on that
Okay.
issue. So we can have some conversation.
Okay.
I'll direct you to some people that
Okay.
can connect with you on that. I think we're about 5 minutes left, so we're going to talk about the high school ambassadors program you have.
We took last year at the march, what was
Mhm.
it? The
Million Man
Youth,
March?
the youth
Youth
march,
March, right.
the youth march. So we took a group of young people, high school students, and a couple of middle school students, to the
To the
march.
march. Hmm.
And as a result of that, we came back and began talking. Um, we I invited one person from the League of Women Voters to
Hmm.
come and talk to these students about
Hmm.
voting. As a result, we had two students to sign up to to register to vote.
Right.
Um, and that's a new program that we are really trying to get a
The
hold
civic
of.
side.
Yes,
Hmm.
so that students can. We don't want. I don't want a child to wait until they're finish high school,
Right.
and say, "Well, this is now. What do I do?" You can do something now.
Exactly.
You can do something now, and I think that would help them to realize that they are important,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
help them to realize that they have certain skills, and they're able to move forward.
Okay. So, so you have these different programs. I think the programs are wonderful, by the way, and I think that there are corporations you need to talk to that could probably want some corporate help. Sometimes it's not funding. They put people on the board to help give direction, help network
Yes,
stuff,
right.
because it's obvious David Shoes is the type of organization we need in all the communities. The one thing we never told the public is where we located. Where's David Shoes located? Okay.
Well, right now,
Yeah.
David Shoes is located in Irvington.
Okay.
In my house.
Okay.
We work basically out of my house, but my goal, my dream is to have a place and a physical place because we need it where the kids can come in and we can certainly expand our program if we had a place. And my dream is to be able to try to do my best to try to provide, even if David Shoes can't provide a need that a kid has, then we find out how we get this need, satisfied. We try to find the answers for this kid.
Well, see, that goes back to the question then we need to raise about collaboration. Are you collaborating with any other organizations that are nonprofit or not nonprofit?
I've collaborated with some organizations,
Okay.
but that's another step that we need to go forward.
Okay,
To
'cause I think it's
collaborate.
important because even when it comes to space, some of the things you may want to think about, and I'm just giving you experience of personal experience as well as Legislative Black Caucus experience. Oftentimes you can find nonprofits that already have space, they don't have programs. And oftentimes
that's
if you get space within the program, grant writers and others is willing to fund the program, not the space sometimes.
Right,
And
right.
then so it's a combination, but we can have some offline conversations
Good,
about
good,
that
good.
as well. Where do you see David Shoes moving in the future? Because you're doing so many wonderful things now.
My goal is to impact, children in a positive manner. And just like I'd like to see David Shoes as a place where students know that they can come to and get help, regardless of what that help looks like. Just like I said, if we can't do it, then we can find somebody who can. I want them to know that they can come to that place and feel welcomed, feel warm, and feel loved.
Okay.
And know that somebody cares, and know that somebody's going to be there fighting for them.
So you're located in the township of Irvington, New Jersey right now. Has there been any conversation or awareness made to the mayor and council members of local government in the township of Irvington about your program? And I guess the next question, are they trying to assist or help direct you if they can't fund you in some direction?
No, but that's my fault. Because like I started this out, I had no idea anything about government or about anything. This came out of passion. I'm just now learning about how to move forward, and so that's part of the process. I will get in touch with them. That's one thing that we intend to do. But it's taken quite some time for me to learn exactly what a nonprofit is, how to manage it, and how to work. You talked about a higher power. I thank God because we are here only because of him. Certainly not because of my knowledge and my experience or what I know, but only because of him.
So offline, we'll put you in touch with the mayor of the township and set up a meeting for you.
Okay.
So you can have that conversation with the mayor and things he's doing, because the mayor's doing a good job over
Yeah.
there. He need to work with others too in order to strengthen the township. We know that. I'll also talk to you about some folk. You may not know this, you're a teacher, but Queen Latifah's mother was a teacher
Yeah,
in
I know
Irvington.
at Irvington High.
Irvington
Right.
High School. She was very involved with the kinds of things that you're doing, nonprofit for young people. Sometimes you might be able to send a letter and be surprised. You may get an answer back
Yes.
from the Queen, okay?
Yes.
Because she loves her township, she loves Newark, she loves
Right.
Irvington, she loves New Jersey. And so little things like that, and this is just information for nonprofits and others, we have to think through the process, because oftentimes we're shy in terms of
Yes,
reaching out, or we don't
yes.
think about the folks who are closest to us. Oftentimes we think if we send a message or write a letter or make a phone call, no one's going to listen or someone's going to say no. You'd be surprised who will say yes to you. It wasn't that long ago that no one knew it, but Oprah Winfrey hopped up in New Jersey.
Right,
And she's doing
right,
some things. So
right,
you never
right,
know who's
right.
willing to help you as a
Right.
nonprofit. But we're getting ready to close out, but I want the viewers to please share this information with your family and friends, and please get in touch with Elaine, and wherever you can help her, she would appreciate it. The members of New Jersey Legislative Block Caucus would appreciate it, and I just want you to have a good day. This concludes our program now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.